Welcome to Mind Your Matter. I'm Jodi.
I'm Shannon, and let's get into the conversation.
Shannon and I have been friends and really just like in relationships since I think it was, 2021, 2020?
2020.
Okay, so like 2020, so 5 years of you just being in each other's lives and a relationship that kind of started in connecting around spiritual things and spiritual information has literally blossomed into really more intimate connection in terms of our family life. And we don't live close to each other, but we are regularly in contact with each other. We share a lot of the same ideas and outlook on life. Honestly, our past, our history, it's not that the circumstances have been identical, but the process of the circumstances have been so near identical that we're like, no way, you felt that too, or you experienced that too, just really hilarious things that I'm sure will come out in these conversations. But
For sure.
I have been, Shannon is a person that she has this sense of humor and this like deep awareness of herself, but then also just is so well learned about life and all the things we're going to get to talk about in this episode and in these episodes that follow on Mind Your Matter, that the conversation is always good. Our conversation is literally always propelling us both forward, I feel like. And so we really just wanted to have a space where we come and share those conversations with more people. So am I leaving something out? You share.
No, I'll share. I will share, since you shared about me for a hot second. I'm going to share about you too. Jodi is just one of these people, and this is why I'm so excited to do this. I'm so excited to get to have these conversations with her. Our conversations really are top tier, every single one. We can call just to shoot the breeze kind of thing, and it turns into some amazing, deep, I'm still thinking about it 3 days later kind of conversation, because Jodi is this fount of wisdom and insight like no one I have ever met before. Like, to get to be in Jodi's presence and just to get to talk to Jodi, you're gonna level up your whole life in one conversation. She's gonna say something that blows your mind, and you're gonna go put it into practice, and you're gonna be a different person the following week. It's happened to me more times than I can count. So,
Oh wow, that's quite the compliment, because I honestly feel that way about Shannon. And that is really, I think, the thing that kind of magnetized us in this space, because it was like, we have to say these things in bigger spaces because they're revolutionary sometimes in the way that we think, in the way that we approach life, and in the way that we actually support each other in getting out of our shit. I mean, if I'm just being real, like,
yes.
it's so nice to be able to have at least a person. And if you're fortunate, you might have more than one, which I do have more than one, and I'm grateful for that. But to have at least one person in your life that, when you go to that space and you go have that conversation, your life is going to be so exponentially better for having had that exchange. And you're going to feel lighter. You're probably going to feel more like your truest self when you leave it. And you might have just cracked jokes for an hour. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not always like super spiritually deep. It's just so very real and relatable. And I love being able to share that with you, Shannon. And I'm so glad that you said, let's do this conversation. So everyone, welcome into our little private conversation here. You're getting a front row seat to that. Honestly, I don't know if you want to talk about more about what propelled us into having this very specific conversation.
Yeah, I think when we were first talking about it, the thing that really drew me in is because everything on social media, literally every time I open Instagram, which is not all that often anymore, and if I do, it's for very specific, I'm looking for very specific things, very specific people. But I just feel like my entire feed became this overwhelming like force of like Oh, you need to fix your fascia. You need to heal your nervous system. Oh, perimenopause. This is what it looks like. This is how you need to train if you're over 40 years old. This and it I mean it was insane. And I get it, right? This is my algorithm, right? I created this nonsense. I'm sure. Because what I do and what I focus on is a lot in the health and wellness kind of space. So I understand that's probably what I'm being inundated with more. But even just in talking to other women my age, that's what we're all getting bombarded with. It's like you may go on there looking for, cute, cuddly cat videos, and it doesn't matter. You're going to hear about your nervous system and all the things that are wrong with you and how to fix it. And I think that is the conversation that we always kind of come back to that I love is this needing to be fixed and looking for some outside force to save you, looking for something outside of yourself to fix everything. So I'm excited to have all kinds of conversations about maybe all the ways that we have tried to fix ourselves, and the conclusions that we have come to, and will continue, I'm sure, to come to in this process. What
Yeah,
about you?
well, I was going to say, you guys will probably hear us ask questions out loud in these conversations back and forth to each other and be like, what do you think about this? Um, because this conversation is not at all like, and this is that on that. And that's the end of that conversation. However, there will be a lot of experiences shared, a lot of what looks like kind of a science experiment that's kind of ongoing with both of us. I think we both come from a place of experimentation, honestly, like with our own lives and our own selves, and going, does this actually work for me? Is this fruitful? Can it actually produce, and can it be recreated over and over and over again using certain things that people say are the way that you do XYZ, Um, so that's really valuable to me because I'm the kind of person that's like, well, let's see if that's actually true, right? And the other thing is that you and I initially, when we came together, we were talking at that time in our relationship, we were talking about spiritual things. Both of us have come from like religious background and church history and all of those things, and um, extracted ourselves from those environments, and while also not leaving behind like the things that have been beneficial to us. So then we got to have a lot of conversation around that in the 5 years that we've known each other, and I'm sure those things will also come into these conversations. But there was something that you said to me a while back, and it has stayed with me consistently because I do feel like this is the crux of so much of what we experience. You mentioned Instagram, social media, and the bombardment of just all of these ways that we need to better ourselves, and if this is going on for you, then these are the things that you can expect, and this is how you get out of it, whatever. Like, and it's just wild to watch it, and it feels like sometimes when you're in those spaces that it's like you're just being hit left and right with information that's like, pay attention to me, look at me, over here, over here, over here. And it's marketing madness. Do you know what I mean? And so back to what I was saying is that you mentioned this idea, this theme, and it's just stood out to me because as I hold it up against everything that I have walked through in my life, I'm like, no, this is true. This is a true statement. And you have said, everything is an identity conversation. Everything is an identity conversation. And you mentioned being on social media and them like literally targeting you based on your gender, based on what they think you'll be thinking about in your life right now, currently, and all of that, which is definitely identity based, right? And yet, even like zooming out even further from that kind of scenario is like the way that we are defining ourselves, and how the defining of ourselves is literally impacting the level and quality of life we get to live.
Yes.
you and I think that's what has been so like at the center of everything you and I talk about constantly, because we'll come together maybe experiencing challenge or whatever, and we're talking to each other, and it's like, well, here's the idea I'm holding, here's the story I'm telling about this, and it can be a little irritating sometimes to know all the things, and feel like, okay, well, that's great. I know how to label myself beautifully. I know how to identify my deficiencies. I know how to say that this is the pattern and I'm experiencing this thing in my life because of the trauma that happened to me when I was 5. Like, you know what I mean? It's one thing to do all that dissecting and that analyzing. It's a whole other thing to be like, and so what do we do with this now?
Yes.
And you and I've both experienced in a number of different settings, not just religious, but in a number of settings where it's like there's these ways that they approach retraining, what I call like training the dog, like this fleshy version of who we are in the world and trying to better it. And there was something in me that just kind of like snapped a while back. And I was like, I'm done with this. This is a wheel that I don't want to be on anymore. I'm so in, this mode of constantly analyzing myself, constantly trying to figure out, well, what's the root of this? Like even all of that, trying to get to the root, to the root, to the root of every single thing. And it's like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a much more efficient way to bring ourselves out of this chaotic noise of life that's constantly telling us improve, improve, improve,
Yes.
um, or helping people get out of the wheel of chasing health,
Yes.
chasing vitality, like they were born to do it.
Yes.
Like that's all they were born for, was just to try to get healthy, just try to be,
Well, and then what? Like, because maybe then you are healthy. And then what? And then I'm chasing freedom or I'm chasing abundance or and the key word here is chasing, right? Or striving or whatever. Like, we're never resting in something. We're never, you know what I mean? We're never just being, we're never just existing. We're always chasing, we're always striving. And it's like, get me off of every hamster wheel, not just get me off all of the hamster wheels.
Yes. I know we were speaking just before we started this recording, which is why we're like, we should be recording this. And it was really talking about the moments in our life where we've looked at our life and said, this can't be my life. And I know specifically the first time I ever said that to myself. I know where I was standing. I know what was going on. And then I can't even tell you the countless times after that moment in my life that I said that to myself, looking at myself in the mirror, going, girl, this cannot be our life. But it was that thing of like, well, when am I going to finally get to that thing where it's like, okay, that has passed. That is over with now. I'm not dealing with that anymore. I'm not cycling through that anymore, and I can tell you for years, it felt like there might never be an end to this challenge, this pattern, this way of thinking. Like, the challenge would come up and be like, didn't I already deal with this? Didn't I
Yes.
already, process this? Haven't I already analyzed to death this scenario and situation? And so it's just like, you and I really do connect around those things and going, no, 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 this isn't it. This isn't it. Like, we're not going to keep on these hamster wheels of, you know, all the methods, all of the different methods that have been presented and said, well, just tune this one little area of your life, it's your diet, or it's your circadian rhythm, or it's your program, it's your program. And I don't think that any of those things exclusively are just like absolutely false or not true. I just think that it's just another wheel we get on and we cycle through it until we're like, okay, now what? What's the next thing? And then we jump from that wheel to another wheel. And you and I are in the space of going, crush the wheel, break the wheel, forget the wheel, stop being a hamster, change who you think you are, and exit the maze, stop being smart rats and exit the maze. So for me, that was like when we started having those conversations, it was like, yes, this is something that I feel like is valuable for people to process or consider. Sometimes it doesn't even enter our state of awareness that we're still on a wheel.
Right.
That whatever it is that we've chosen to pour ourselves into is just another program in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah. It just all feels like a big distraction. And you and I've used that word about 1.5 million times in conversations that we have, but all of those things to me every time. And it's still shocking to me how I'm able to get pulled into another one, right? Like, oh, this, no, 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 this is definitely the missing piece. This is definitely the thing that is going to make everything better. This is going to be the thing that makes sure that I never end up in this place again. This is it. This is for sure it. And then you finish it and you're like, oh, again, I I did it again. And it's just a distraction. It's all a distraction from everything that's on the inside. And that's the part that most of us don't want to look at. And I'm not talking about the inside, like all my trauma and my programming and my conditioning, but I mean the deep inside, the soul inside, that part that, we don't want to sit with. I read something really great on social media this week, and the person was talking about rest and how, with women especially, and I'm sure this applies to some men too, but women especially, rest doesn't feel safe because getting quiet with ourselves and alone, where we're not scrolling, we're not reading, we're not eating, we're just sitting with ourselves, feels deeply uncomfortable because it feels deeply unsafe. And I think that that is so true. And I think that there's so many things now that are a distraction, keeping us in work and away from ourselves. And I think that that's a conversation that you and I have had, over and over and over again. And it's still something I'm telling you that is hard for me and that I resist. Like, I'll put on a meditation, like, yep, a pre-recorded walk me through it, sit meditation. I'll do that. You tell me that I need to just sit with myself for an hour in silence. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me gather myself for this inner journey that we're about to take.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it is. It really is. And this right before summer really got into full swing, I decided I was going to extract myself from the world of social media. I was managing several social media accounts, which was just silliness. And I deactivated most of them. And I started to just gradually, at first it felt a little bit cold turkey, but gradually pull myself out of all of that simulated, digitized, information space. And one of the things I realized right away was how, when I'm engaging with that, how mushy my brain feels after a very short period of time of being in it, because it is so hypnotic, it's so hypnotizing. And as I spent more time away from it, I also realized how bored I was. And I realized how my body would literally just pick my phone up, like an addict, just like it's just like compulsive. You know what I mean? There's no thought about it at all. It's patternistic. My body has become acclimated to doing it. And so we just do this thing. And I would I would literally get into the flow and I'd just be sitting chilling, like, I don't need a bunch of stimulus right now. I don't need to be, entertained. I don't need any of that. And I would get a book out and I would start reading a book and my brain would immediately be like, oh, you know what? We need to look up this thing. And I'd be like, what is happening right now? I'm telling you right now, it's been an exercise in like separating myself from all of that automatic behavior and that compulsive need to be preoccupied with doing something, reading something, engaging with something. And I'm sure there are plenty of people that are like, oh, that stuff is not a problem for me. And that's fantastic. It's just, I know how easy it is to get sucked into, whether it's social media or your healing journey or your spiritual journey or your relationship issue or your financial pursuits. I know how easy it is to just get sucked into something that takes all of your energy and your attention, so that, like you said, I don't have to be still and I don't have to sit with myself and I don't have to really know who I am at all. I don't have to ask any of those questions. Um, I do hope that some of the conversations we get to have here starts to break those things down for people in a way that it's like, I'm really ready to get back in tune with myself and with the depths of who and what I am, because that can be so healing to our lives. And we are going to talk about healing. And I know that word is so generic at this point, and it's like you can just toss it out and, it can mean a million different things. But we are going to talk about it because we live in a world that says, keep improving,
Yeah.
keep going, keep being better, keep on keeping on. And I said something to my husband the other day. I was like, are we better yet? Like, have we gotten there? Like, after all this that we've done, are we better yet? Um, I realize those things are subjective, but you and I have had so many conversations about the distractions in the need to improve ourselves, or just the desire to free ourselves from what is challenging us or what is making us feel, honestly, the fear that grabs a hold of us, whether it's a sickness in our body or a breakdown in a relationship or stress at work or stress at home. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, those things are pulling on us constantly to seek outside of ourselves how to make our life better. And that's what puts us on the wheel. It's the constant seeking outside of ourselves that is like throwing us up on another wheel of, well, here's a remedy you could try, or here's this thing, or have you gone to a therapist, or have you done this thing? It's like, not here to knock any of those things. If you're doing something right now that you feel is working for you and is making your life feel freer, have at it. I think you and I both finally got to the point where it's like, well, girl, we done tried everything. That class, been to it. That book, read it. That church, been there. You know what I mean? It was like you and I started to share things and go, oh, wait a minute, we've done all these things because there was this compulsive need to be better, to make better. And I think you and I have agreed that we are supposed to be living a joyful, pleasing, expansive, full, whole life, for sure. That is what we're here for. It's the pursuit of the things, thinking that's going to get that stuff, that has been such a distraction.
Because, and I think it's like, I hate to say an honest mistake, but that's what I'll call it, because it feels so much, I think sometimes when we're chasing those things, it can feel like expansion, right? That's a really tricky thing, because that concept of being better, getting better, moving up, like leveling up, whatever the words that people love to use about that, that can feel like expansion, like sometimes in the moment, right? It's very deceptive. But I'm like, real expansion does not require striving. It doesn't. And just in the natural order of things, I mean, if we look, like, let's just look at labor and delivery, right? There's contraction before there's expansion. And so I think so many of us, and what I've discovered for myself, is how much I'm trying to escape the contraction that actually leads to the expansion, right? I'm using a distraction to try to escape from the contraction that will lead to my expansion.
Yep, that's a whole word right there. That is a whole thing, because it's so true. I think we are so numbed out to our life, and we want to be, but I think the thing I'm most excited about in having these conversations with you is, I've seen people who speak in places where the answer should be, where the remedy should be, who are not remedied and who are still guessing and still wanting to know, how do we do this thing? How do we make our life like we want it to be? How do we open up into a space where our physical body is not experiencing the ravage of disease and discomfort and all that stuff? And the answer is very simple. It actually is very simple. And I noticed that I look to places where they say they have the answer. I'm going to say this flat out. Religion is one of the places that says they have the answer. They've named it. This is the answer for everything. But their people are still sick and dying. Their marriages are still breaking down. And they're still not totally satisfied in their life. Sin is still a challenge. And I'm not going to get into sin here on this podcast at all. I just want to say, if you have the answer, why doesn't it work? And so,
That's a whole word. That's a whole word in and of itself. If you have the answer, why doesn't it work?
yeah, why isn't it working and why isn't it resolving? And that's just one example in my life because I grew up in that space where it's like we have the answer. We know what the answer is. We know the answer to every problem is this right here, this right here. And it's like, well, then why are y'all dying? Why are y'all dying of tragic disease? And their answer would be, that's God's will. And I'm like, you don't know God, and that's a part. We'll be having those conversations in this podcast where it's like, we really have to get back to, like you said, Shannon, that the depths within us where the truth resides and has always been there waiting to be activated. And we're stopping all of this outsourcing to people who say they have the answer, but their life doesn't reflect it, to places that say, here, try this thing, buy this thing, hack this thing. And we just start getting back to the truth, really. There's been this huge swing lately since 2020. It was like everybody wanted to go back to their ancestral way of living. Let's go back to the ancestral way. And we're going to get to have those conversations too, because the fact of the matter is you start to dig into those things and you start to realize, I don't think you mean what you think you mean when you say that, because I think you know exactly what you're saying. There are some truths in there that may be helpful to your life. But if you're attempting to literally swing your whole life around to let's live like our ancestors, no, we don't go backward. We don't go back into anything, And so these conversations are truly meant to support the idea that we're able to mind our matter. We're able to shape our world. We're able to heal ourselves. We're able to free ourselves. We're able to bring ourselves back to the natural state of wholeness that we were designed to express. And it's not going to be found out here in this world where our senses constantly dictate feelings and ideas that are less than optimal, So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a lot to throw out there, but we're up for the challenge. We're going to have the conversations that we know have changed us, that we know have liberated us, that have put us and set us on a path of expansion and bigger ways of showing up in our lives and being in the world and opportunity and possibility and all of that. So,
yeah. So we're on a journey to expand inward, and y'all are welcome to come along.
Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, this concludes our basic introduction to Mind Your Matter. We're so looking forward to these conversations. And until the next time.